I had a dream.
Shem told you to dance in a tango contest?
A dancing teacher wants to tango with you?
Critics are raving about Tango Shalom. It's clever and inventive, with right chemistry on and off the dance floor.
You're a lunatic!
A funny and thoughtful family film with a warm heart and a playful spirit. From the director of My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Oh, that's my Fernando.
Tango Shalom, in select theaters this weekend.
Robservations with Robert, Meyer, Burnett.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your archbishop of Banterbury, your evangelist of the imagination, and of course, the still undefined existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, me, Robert Meyer Burnett, and I am Robcasting at you imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek singularity community. This is Robservations, the show about something. Robservations, episode number 739, and today is Star Trek Day. It is September 8th. It is the 55th anniversary of the debut of Star Trek on American television. I believe if you're in Canada, it started a day early on the 7th, but you know, we don't count that. Not that we don't count Canada. We do count Canada. Do you know why? Because Tango Shalom is opening all across Canada on Friday. It's opening in Montreal, Toronto, Winnipeg, and Vancouver. So if you live in Canada and you want to support your boy here, the Duke of Dope Discourse, please don't walk. Run to your nearest theater. Take your friends. Tell everybody you know and tell them to go see Tango Shalom, a delightful Jewish indie spiritual quest family dance comedy fable. How often do you get to make low-budget indie movies that wind up in theaters all over the world? The next place Tango Shalom is going is Russia. That's right, it's playing theatrically in, I believe, 30 Russian states. Do you call them states, territories, provinces? I don't know what they are called, but it's going to be all through Russia, the Balkans, everywhere. Azerbaijan. Pretty cool. Very excited about that. So, hey, that's what's happening, everyone. So do that. Today's Star Trek Day. You know, it might come as a surprise to a number of the people who watch this channel that I've spent an inordinate amount of time in my life thinking about Star Trek. Contemplating it. Star Trek is sort of, I've talked about this ad infinitum on this show, but I'm going to talk about it some more. Star Trek is basically like, in a way, kind of like my religion. And when I say that, it doesn't mean I believe that Star Trek is real. Although some part of me, I think, still kind of does. At least believes the original series is real. Somewhere the original series, in some alternate quantum realm, the original series actually occurred. I mean, I know, because as I was growing up, it fueled my imagination. Now, one of the things about Star Trek for me was I was a young whippersnapper. My mom, she says 3, but as we all know, it was 5 when I started watching Star Trek. I don't remember. People have been asking me recently, do you remember the first time you saw Star Trek? I don't. I remember I was watching it at 5. That's when it went into strip syndication in the United States. It went off the air in 1969, but in 1972 it came back, and it was syndicated. And where I grew up in Seattle, it was on every night of the week, which was fantastic. It was on every night, weeknight, on Channel 11 at 6 o'clock. And from the time I was like 5 to, I don't know when it went off the air, but I had to have watched it for at least half of my young life. I mean, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, probably 14. So I loved it. Now, one of the things about Star Trek fandom that I think is, I don't think it's the same now as it was. This is, of course, pre-internet. But the thing about Star Trek fandom was, back in the day, so Star Trek was on TV for strip syndication in 72. In 73, the animated series came on the air, and it ran 2 seasons for 22 episodes. 73, 74. It won I believe, a Children's Emmy Award. And many of the creative team that worked on the Star Trek animated series worked on the original series. Obviously, Chekhov wasn't there, and James Doohan did like the voice of Eric's, and Gene Roddenberry's wife, of course, Majel Barrett, did voices of like Maress, the Cation, Cat Lady on the bridge. So they had to cut down, and the animation was very limited. It was limited animation. They repeated a lot of shots. So it looked cheap. But the stories were good. There was a lot of decent stories. And I remember the first episode, I think the first episode broadcast was Far Beyond the Stars, which I thought was pretty interesting because it had this giant spacefaring vessel that might have been at home on a Space 1999 episode a couple of years later. But for me, Star Trek was something I dreamt about. I thought about it. I walked around. I spent a long time thinking about what it would be like to live on the Enterprise. And then I've talked about before how, like, in 1975, the Franz Joseph Technical Manual and the Star Trek blueprints, the Enterprise blueprints, were released. And one of the interesting things about those two releases was that they were done in such a way as if they actually came from the Star Trek universe. So the technical manual was like a real book that came from the 23rd century, and the blueprints for the Enterprise, they were like issued to cadets when you came on board. So it was a big deal, and it, in a way, I think it sort of changed my fandom, because there was nothing like this before. There was nothing like so I was 8 when they came out, and being given the blueprints of the Enterprise. Now, these were not canonical. These did not come from the production office. So but I didn't know this. So to me, they were canonical. If they published something, it was like, wow, that's real. Even though I understood from like the James Blish novelizations and the Star Trek, the numbered Star Trek 1, Star Trek 2, Star Trek 3, there were certain mistakes made because the James Blish novelizations of the episodes were based on production drafts. So, for instance, City on the Edge of Forever was called the Unreal McCoy in the Blish adaptation because McCoy went nuts. So, but getting these things, I can't tell you what it was like to be an 8-year-old and to love Star Trek and to watch it all the time and to think about it. I mean, it was by far my favorite show. The only TV shows that I really loved when I was a kid was Star Trek, the original Twilight Zone, and The Outer Limits. And then anything that Sci-Fi Channel played, Channel 11 played on their Sci-Fi Theater on Sunday afternoons. And I was really into this stuff. And by the time I was 10, my parents let me join the science fiction book club, and I started reading the great canonical works of science fiction. I mean, the Foundation trilogy, of course. I talked about reading Dune when I was 12 in the 6th grade, the same year I read The Sword of Terry Brooks, The Sword of Shannara. The thing about the James Blish, the thing about the Franz Joseph Technical Manual and Enterprise blueprints was they gave this sense of reality to Star Trek, and everything was thought out. Like somebody sat down and like, okay, we're going to use, where are these things located in relation to the bridge? And somebody sat down and said, okay, here's the Enterprise. How does this work? And they thought a lot about it, and it felt real. And the same was true of this Franz Joseph Technical Manual. They had the Articles of the Federation. They had different kinds of starships. So it worked as a technical manual, but it also provided... Larry Nemechek taught me a word when I was working on the Next Generation Blu-rays. He told me that he, in his younger days, was a backgrounder. And people like Jeffrey Mandel and Doug Drexler were backgrounders. And what was a backgrounder? A backgrounder was somebody that would fill in information about the Star Trek universe. And at the same time, there were books. There was Trek, the magazine for Star Trek fans. Like, it was a fanzine, but then they started publishing books called The Best of Trek. And the Best of Trek books were filled with essays written by Star Trek fans. Some of them were making sense of the in-universe canon. Some were examinations of the characters from sort of a literary perspective. But there was a lot of thought spilled about the Star Trek franchise. Now, we're talking in the 70s and into the 80s when I was a kid. So it was profoundly affecting to me because I spent a lot of time contemplating the meanings behind the 79 episodes of the original series, and so it was, what do I want to call it? I want to call it a holistic fandom, because it wasn't just like a show I watched and liked. It became this universe that was tangible. It really existed. I just hadn't got there yet. That's kind of how I felt about it in my mind. And as other things started to come out, in 1980, Star Trek Maps came out that tried to, it was two big fold-out posters that were both double-sided that had all of the Star Trek universe on it. But it was, again, presented as if it was real. And there was a lot of fans and a lot of authors and a lot of people tried to make sense of the Star Trek universe and present it as if it were real. Star Trek Maps came with actually I think to this day, one of the most crazy pieces of Star Trek memorabilia. It was a book on stellar navigation. And I'm sure they took it from some textbook or something, but it made the Star Trek universe real, as if it were a real place. And that is how Star Trek, my fandom, developed, is that Star Trek, it all kind of worked together. And when Star Trek the Motion Picture came out in 1979, there were other books that came out in the wake of that, like the Star Trek Spaceflight Chronology that Rick Sternbach contributed to, that was basically a timeline of the Star Trek universe from before the 20th century all the way up through the time of the motion picture. And there was all different kinds of starships, all different kinds of development. It had like news stories from the future. And again, there was this effort to make the Star Trek universe a real place. Now, this defined my childhood. And there were also Star Trek novels. Bantam was publishing Star Trek novels at the time. Some were better than others. Things like The Starless World, or Trek to Mad World, or Spock Messiah, or The Galactic Whirlpool, or Vulcan, that literally had Spock with a damsel in distress being menaced by giant ants. But the thing about the better Star Trek novels is the authors of those novels did the same thing. They tried to make the Star Trek universe feel real. And in the wake of Star Trek the Motion Picture, Timescape Books, which was a division of Pocket, they started publishing Star Trek novels. And the first one was by Vonda McIntyre, a very reputable science fiction writer in her own right. She'd published books like Dream Snake, and she was a published author that was now going back into Star Trek. And Howard Weinstein, who wrote an episode of the animated series, wrote The Covenant. I think it was the Covenant of the Crown, I think. That was the third one. After the Klingon, there was Entropy Effect, Klingon Gambit, and The Covenant of the Crown was like the third book in the Pocket line. But these books were written by fans who were also doing what had been done throughout the 70s, which was extrapolate upon the universe, add to it, but make it feel absolutely real. So a big part of my Star Trek fandom was that in my mind, the Star Trek universe was not simply the episodes, but it was this living, growing universe that was being examined on one hand in the pages of The Best of Trek. It was being extrapolated upon in the Star Trek Technical Manual, Star Trek Maps, Star Trek Blueprints. And then in the novels, it was extrapolated upon further. And to me, there was no difference. There was no canonical Star Trek, which was what was on TV, and then the non-canonical expanded universe stuff. None of that existed. To me, if it was being published, it was official. It was all canon. It's just the stories in the novels were stories. So you had Vulcan. I mean, not a great novel, but it was like a third season Star Trek episode. All of it lived in my imagination as if it were a living, breathing universe. It wasn't necessarily possible to get to it, but you had to think of the universe the way you had to think of the real world. If A, B, and C are true in the Star Trek universe, then D, E, F, G, H, I are also true. We just haven't seen them. And that's why people were able to extrapolate and write Star Trek novels and write these reference manuals or whatever. The medical reference manual that came out later on in the 80s, Mr. Scott's Guide to the Enterprise. And every time they made something, they were trying to extrapolate upon that. And the biggest affirmation of this was Star Trek the Motion Picture. because Star Trek the Motion Picture took our TV show and transposed it to the big screen, which is something that had never happened before. Now, obviously, there were many aborted attempts to make Star Trek movies. The famous Philip Kaufman directed, he was going to direct it, Planet of the Titans, where Toshiro Mifune was going to play a Klingon. And that didn't happen, but the Ken Adam production design and the Ralph McQuarrie artwork that you can see, the basis of Star Trek, the Discovery, when the Discovery didn't look like a pizza cutter with a weird open saucer section and spins around, whatever. So, but anyway, so when Star Trek the Motion Picture came out, it was the ultimate affirmation of the way I thought about Star Trek because it expanded the universe even further. You went to Earth in the 23rd century for the first time. You got to see Starfleet headquarters. You got to see more technology. The San Francisco, the Golden Gate Bridge had an electromagnetic thing on the top of it, and you saw Epsilon 9, and you saw the Klingon Katinga battle cruisers, which were upgraded design. You saw the Imperial Klingon race for the first time in their armor. So even Star Trek the Motion Picture broadened the scope of the universe, and it did not violate anything that had come before. So you could watch Star Trek the Motion Picture, and all the arcane knowledge that I'd put away about something that, well, let's face it, didn't exist, was still accessible. It didn't diminish or demolish or destroy the illusion I had in my mind that somewhere out there the Star Trek universe was real. And that it continued to be that way into the 80s. Now, when things started to change, to be honest, was with Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. There were certain things in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. I know it's a classic now, but for me, you have to remember, Star Trek had been 10 years of my life. So a decade of my life I'd now, since the time I was 5 years old to the time when Star Trek II came out, when I was, what was I? I was probably 14 when Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan came out. When The Wrath of Khan came out, there were things about it that, for instance, immediately, I saw Wrath of Khan 4 times the first day it opened. I saw it at the John Ann's Theater. I had tickets to every show, 4 shows. But when I looked at the uniforms, the Mighty Maroons, for the first time, I didn't like them. Because they didn't seem like that's what you would wear on a starship. They looked like naval, like if you were on a ship at sea, it made sense that you were wearing wool peacoats. I mean, that's what you would wear. Like if you were Marco Ramius and you're on the conning tower of the Hunt for Red October in the middle of the North Atlantic, you would have a Mighty Maroon on if that was your uniform, because it would keep you warm. But that was the first time. I mean, they looked fine. I get it. I understand Nicholas Meyer wanted to bring a nautical feel to Star Trek. But the thing is, they weren't on the high seas. And it was the first time I ever saw anything in Star Trek that I'd watched. Yeah, I'm not talking about episodes like Plato's Stepchildren or And the Children Shall Lead, which, by the way, that's easily one of the worst episodes of Star Trek ever produced. But for the first time, Star Trek I didn't believe it. I was like, I don't like these uniforms, because they didn't seem like anybody would actually wear them on a starship, which I thought was sort of strange, because why wouldn't you? And then they did other things, like they changed the phaser banks. They were no longer a steady beam. They were more like oscillating bolts. There was just things that were different. And it made sense to me because why were they different? They were different because Nicholas Meyer wasn't a Star Trek fan. Nicholas Meyer was a classic literature fan. And when he was hired to do Star Trek, Roddenberry oversaw the motion picture, so it was still the same creator. But when Nicholas Meyer came in as a classicist and somebody that knows culture, knows music, he came from a very musical family, and he was a very literary-minded guy. So he could watch a few Star Trek episodes, and he's like, yeah, I got it. It's an allegorical action-adventure story. I get it. So he's like, Roddenberry wanted me to read Horatio Hornblower, that everything I need to know is in there. Okay. So he took that a little bit more literally than I would have wanted. But it was also the first time when a creator working on my favorite franchise didn't know the franchise. Wasn't a fan. And it changed what Star Trek felt like. And then, as the movies went along, that schism kind of got bigger. Things changed. Leonard Nimoy, believe it or not, I think hiring Leonard Nimoy and then later Shatner to direct Star Trek movies was a huge mistake. Because why? They were in Star Trek, but they weren't fans of Star Trek. And so the universe, the in-universe, the canonical Star Trek universe doesn't matter to Leonard or Bill. They don't care. You know, they're telling, again, classical stories. So things, I mean, the decks in Star Trek V that go up instead of down. Deck 1's the bridge. It doesn't go up. You know, it's just something that happens in these movies. So as the movies rolled along, the reality of the Star Trek universe that had been with me since I was a 5-year-old started to slip away. Now, then we got to the Next Generation, which, again, rebooted the franchise in grand fashion. Took place 80, 100 years later, you know, almost a century later. So everything old was new again. Didn't have a problem with any of that. I mean, sure, my beloved Star Trek spaceflight chronology was rendered moot by the new series because there's a new Star Trek history we hadn't heard yet that was going to be written in Next Generation. Next Generation then went back to Earth of the 24th century. So there was, and I didn't mind it, but there was a lot of reconciling in my own mind I had to do because of the Next Generation. And that moved, as we moved forward through Star Trek, it happened more and more and more. Obviously, when they decided to make Star Trek 09 and reboot it, they did something that was pretty ingenious, which is, okay, this is a different universe, even though there was crossover with Spock, and it really didn't make much sense because they didn't really think about it, that if there was one pivotal moment in time, and you think they would, that this one pivotal moment in time would have changed the universe irrevocably, that could have been really interesting. But there wasn't that much effort put into it because J.J. Abrams wasn't a Star Trek fan, and he wasn't particularly keen on getting to know Star Trek. So, fine, you know, we're dealing with the Kelvin universe. And then, of course, in 2017, word came down the pike that we're getting a new Star Trek. The problem is, what modern Star Trek represents to me is a complete break with the consistent canonical reality that which had been in my head since I was 5 years old. There's been no effort on the part of modern Star Trek to make it look or feel anything like the original Star Trek. And, which is fine, but like other franchises, say the Gundam animated franchise, say it's a different universe. You cannot tell me that the Star Trek universe I was watching from 1972 to 2005 is the same universe that's depicted in Star Trek Discovery, Picard, Strange New Worlds, Lower Decks, Prodigy, whatever. It simply isn't. Doesn't look like it, doesn't feel like it. I mean, Lower Decks pats themselves on the back because they make a bunch of Star Trek references. And that's fine. I guess that's what it's supposed to be. It's not for me. Because, you know, that's not how life is. You wouldn't just keep referencing, how many references can we get to previous Star Trek in there? That doesn't, it doesn't stand on its own yet. I mean, it tries to tell original stories, but it doesn't, none of those people feel to me like they're at all Starfleet officers. But that's neither here nor there. But the interesting thing is when they made new Star Trek, of course, they tried to tell you, no, this is canonical Star Trek. Well, look, if you're going to show me a canonical Star Trek show, the Enterprise or a Constitution-class ship has to look like a Constitution-class ship. It can't just vaguely resemble the lines of a Constitution-class ship. We have seen them. We watched the Enterprise. It was in trials and tribulations for Deep Space Nine. We saw the Defiant, which was in the Defiant that disappeared in the third season in the Tholian Web. We saw it in Enterprise. So the canonical Starship Enterprise is the canonical Starship Enterprise. The canonical Constitution 2 or Constitution-class ships are what they are. We've been seeing them for all this time. So when Star Trek Discovery rolls around and says, we're doing a visual reboot, fine. Just say it's not in your universe and go about your merry way, and I don't have to hate on you as much as I do. But you've got a bunch of yo-yos making a show where they took a cursory glance at the original series, and then they tell you, well, we're doing a visual reboot. Okay, great, then it's not in the same universe. Fine, just say that. Go make your own show. God go, whatever you deity you want to believe in. Vol. Have Vol go with you. Good. Go ahead. But that's really problematic for me as a fan. Maybe that gives you a little bit of insight into why I loathe modern Star Trek, is because there's no attempt to caress it into. That fictional universe was very important to my fandom. The Best of Treks, where literally I would spend hours poring over these philosophical essays about the characters, like what is love like in Vulcan life? Obviously there's love because Sarek loves Amanda, but what does that look like? Those kinds of essays. I'd pore over them. Nobody making modern Star Trek has done any of that. and they're not interested in doing any of that. So none of the stories they're telling, they don't feel authentic. And I'm not here to bash Star Trek on Star Trek Day. I just can't stand all the Star Trek that's been made since 2009 because there's been no effort to honor, I think, the rest of it or try and make it one cohesive universe. And also, Star Trek has turned from an optimistic view of the future to a dystopian one. And what I think is most disturbing is Star Trek that was always at the forefront of representation. They didn't have to pat themselves on the back, but that's all Star Trek is now. There are no good stories. The stories that are being told are non-stories. And I know there's a lot of people that like modern Star Trek because they see themselves in it. They see themselves represented in it. But I think that modern Star Trek also represents what's wrong in this country. In our post social media world, when you can curate all the information that's coming into you, all you want is things that you're interested in. Things that you're already interested in. What Star Trek did for me, and as a byproduct of my interest in Star Trek, was to learn about things I didn't know and share that knowledge. To boldly go into the world I didn't know anything about and use Star Trek as a basis to help me go figure that stuff out. Now, Star Trek is representation is like comfort food for people. If they see, I'm represented on the show, they'll like the show whether the story's good or not. And that's kind of what's happened to our civilization. As long as you agree with me, as long as I can represent, or as long as I see myself in what you're saying, then it's okay. When I think Star Trek used to be the exact opposite. Star Trek looked at you and said, I've said it before on the show, it's not going to tell you what to think. It's going to tell you what to think about. And those are very different things. It would leave you contemplative. Modern Star Trek stories are not, what are they about? Frequently, I'm honestly, unless they're cliche stories about AI presented in the most rudimentary, idiotic way, I can't hang with them. And I actually think modern Star Trek is dangerous. It's dangerous because it's intellectually inferior to modern Star Trek. And this is not me being a gatekeeper. This is me saying, if you're going to tell a story about something, make that story good. You owe it to your audience. You at least have the writers who knew something about something. But I think bad storytelling, stories are how we define ourselves. We relate what happened in our day to other people. Let me tell you a story. You don't want to know what happened to me today? The thing that makes a story great is if you can recognize the truth in that story. And fiction requires even more truth than a story about something that actually happened. Because you have to set up the situation and make somebody believe in the reality that you're presenting before they can listen to the story that you're going to tell. You have to make people believe in your universe and believe your characters before you can tell some outlandish science fiction story about them. And I think in that respect, Star Trek has completely fallen down. None of the characters in modern Star Trek are believable. There's not one shred of believability in any of the situations. I don't believe Tilly would ever be Starfleet material. The way she acts, Burnham, same thing. I don't believe those people would be on starships, not the way they act. There's no military discipline at all. There's no discipline. And whenever we see more of it, I think it's problematic. And what it is, every kid gets a trophy. Everybody gets to do whatever the hell they want. There's no sense of duty. There's only sense of self. And of course, yes, you're going to always touch on things. Saru's like a cliche Star Trek character. But again, I don't believe that character. And so anyway, on this Star Trek Day, I think we have to ask ourselves, as we do every day, what matters to you and what kind of a society do you want to live in? For me, growing up watching Star Trek, the original series presented the society I hoped I would one day live in. I wanted to be like those people. On a starship where everyone was good at their jobs, you could trust people. At the 11th hour, somebody would come up with a solution and pull your bacon out of the fire. And that was the world I thought I would live in as I became an adult. Well, we certainly don't live in that kind of a world. We live in a world where intellect, where science, where truth is always rejected. And Star Trek no longer is interested in telling us stories about truth or what the universe might be like 1,000 years from now. And that's unfortunate. I still go back and I watch the original series. Now, there's a lot of people, oh, Rob, it's so cheesy and it's so funny looking and the effects are bad. First of all, Star Trek was not a cheap show to make. And the effects were state-of-the-art at the time. Yeah, can you recognize they're on an alien planet set? Sure. But Star Trek at its very best, the original series, the criticisms that are always leveled at it for me are, oh, it looks cheesy or this, that, and the other thing. It didn't at the time. I mean, it might now because we've had 55 years of other things to look at. But really, you know, Star Trek has endured, and it is continuing to endure. And in a little more than an hour, we're probably going to see a glimpse of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. And Akiva Goldsman, one of the showrunners and the creators of the show, said, we're going to make Star Trek more like it used to be, episodic. That's not Star Trek's problem. The format of Star Trek has never been the problem. It's the same as it ever was. Great characters and great stories. Star Trek tales, the best anyway, are allegorical stories that somehow relate back to us, here and now. Yet these stories are set in the far-flung future. The question is, and you have to extrapolate on that future, make it believable. I do not believe that 1,000 years hence, one character is going to have to tell our gay couples that they're non-binary. I don't believe that. Not 1,000 years from now. And yet, here we are. And that's even a plot point or a moment in an episode, as opposed to telling us a good story. Wait. Star Trek was inclusive because it was. It wasn't banging you over the head with it. It just was. Lieutenant Uhura was part of the command crew. Nobody had to make any big speeches about the fact that she was a black woman. She was just there. And that was more powerful than any speech you could make, especially in mid-60s America, which was being ripped apart by Vietnam and civil rights and the assassination of John F. Kennedy, all of those things. So hopefully on this Star Trek Day, I wrote on Twitter, I said, happy Star Trek Day, get well soon. Let's hope that moving forward, maybe Strange New Worlds will be good. Maybe, could be. Who knows? I don't think the people, the custodians of Star Trek now understand Star Trek. I don't think they know how to write a good Star Trek story. Maybe someday they will, but I don't believe that day is today or tomorrow or the next. But I'm waiting to be proven wrong. Maybe on this Star Trek Day after 55 years, somebody will come along and know how to tell a great Star Trek story again. Maybe not. David Miller writes in. David Miller says, hail, good Burnett, well met. How are you doing? I hope you took Labor Day off because you've definitely been laboring enough this year, and congratulations on all you've accomplished with Tango Shalom. Anyway, I know this letter has been long coming, so let's get down to it. And let's talk profanity. Fuck yeah, let's talk profanity. When one talks about profanity, we're really talking about communication, a thing that is as old as humanity itself. I don't think we can cover the whole of it in one sitting, so I'm just going to be making some observations on the phenomenon. By the way, it's really, really hot today, so I will be dabbing the sweat from my face. First, let's set the stage. In my opinion, it is my opinion that the human brain is like an organic hard drive with both ROM and RAM. The ROM is the physical brain with all of its consciousness and memories living there. The RAM is the part where we load up on what we're going to say. As with a computer, the RAM is finite. We can only load up so much content to speak at a time. Let's put a pin in that concept for a moment. To continue, I'm going to need a visual aid. One, Kevin Smith. These days, Kevin is famous for being the poster child for dropping the atomic F-bomb. He is Fat Man and Little Boy. But it has not always been thus. If you were to view some of his early interviews on shows like Entertainment Tonight or Access Hollywood, you would notice that Smith's verbiage was generally benign. Now, I'm sure you're thinking that it was a different time, more gentle. Or Smith was early in his career and didn't think he could spew a word salad of F-bombs. Fair enough. Yes, it was a different time, but it is the audience that has changed, not the talent. You see, people of days gone by had a much longer attention span. They would give a speaker considerable time to make a point or present a message. If you'll notice, in his career's infancy, Smith spoke quite deliberately, with, dare I say it, considered discourse. The audience of the time would tolerate that indulgence from their pontificators. Fast forward to present day, and anyone entering the arena of self-promotion is competing for every nanosecond of audience's attention, hence me right now. The speed that Smith and others have to speak has been insanely ratcheted up, and therein lies a problem. Smith and his compatriots have to sound uber intelligent while speaking at a breakneck speed, which brings us back to the brain hard drive analogy. You see, the current audience expects nothing short of perfection from their entertainment. To even have brief gaps in a pundit's delivery would make them look slow-witted. And influencers would rather look vulgar than stupid. So rather than going, while they compose their thoughts, they fill that dead air with the fuck or fucking. And that gives them just enough time to load the next applet of content into their organic RAM. If I could place a silver lining on this, I'd say that I think profanity now functions as a sort of social pressure valve. Fuck yeah. In the not-too-distant past, there were certain things we just didn't say to each other or risk getting punched in the face. As the restrictions on profanity have been relaxed, verbal discourse has become more coarse, but less violent. Hurling profanities at someone is almost as satisfying as punching someone in retaliation for a perceived slight. In closing, I'd have to say that I'm glad that profanity is losing its impact on society. Goddamn right. Because ultimately, profanity is just another form of superstition. It's, if I hear these evil words, something bad will happen, and we've had enough superstition in human history. It can also be a needless distraction when people are trying to get to the meat of the matter. Too often, when a weighty matter is being discussed and a profanity is dropped, the focus turns from the subject at hand to the profanity, which is a colossal waste of time. We should be more concerned with what words mean rather than what they are. I think I'll stop here. I would love to hear what you think. I so enjoy your dissection of a topic, Rob. Cheers, David Miller. Great letter, David. I agree with you, even though I was being glib about it. Look, I think a perfect example is hearing swear words like fuck in Star Trek. Swear words have no place in Star Trek. Whenever I hear a profanity in Star Trek, I mean, look, people are like, well, Rob, there's always been profanity in Star Trek. When Data says shit in Generations, or Kirk says, well, double the bass on you. I get it. You know, those were employed in motion pictures for effect. But I still don't like it. I don't believe that people who are on a ship, whether it's the Discovery, whether it's the Defiant, whether it's the Enterprise, use profanity because of the discipline on the ship. There is a respect in the future for people. I don't think profanity is used. I just don't. And whenever I hear them say it, it makes the characters on Star Trek seem, well, stupid. Because they're written that way. They're either written as angelic miracle workers or they're written as people who are dumb or selfish. They're not written as people in the Star Trek universe. And I think profanity is one of the biggest problems. I agree. We all know what profanity is. That's why it's profanity. But like David said, it is a shortcut. I also think it's not polite. I say it on this show for the same reason David mentioned. I do it for effect. You know, I do it, I don't know, maybe to make people think, or to show people I don't take myself totally seriously. You know, I remember seeing Christopher Hitchens. I used to love watching Christopher Hitchens speak, and listening to him. He wasn't prone to dropping F-bombs. William F. Buckley. You know, these people, whether you might think they're conservatives or not or whatever, they just didn't swear. Swearing does, I think, diminish discourse. And when I say it, to be honest, when I say things like fuck or motherfucker, it makes me, it's the 12-year-old in me or the 11 or 10-year-old in me going tee-hee because I can't. I agree with you. I agree with you, David. It's just another failing of modern Star Trek. But anyway, just my thoughts on that. But a good letter. A good letter. This comes from Matthew in Japan. Matthew in Japan. Redundancies are redundant. In the letter I sent you regarding Blade Runner 2049, I was again far too rambly for my own taste, and realized only after I had sent it that I had repeated myself far too often. I have a long way to go on this journey of learning to write better letters. Even so, despite my terrible writing prose, you saw fit to read one of my letters on the air the other week, and I thank you for that. Oh, thank you for writing it. I also thank you for your patience in going through my autistic ramblings. I am trying to find that right balance between formal and casual and between concise and detailed, and I must confess, it is more difficult than I would like. I have always been one to get caught up in details, making others wish I would just get to the point. Today I thought I would write in to share something I rarely find the time to do anymore. Reading. Last week I decided to pick up my copy of the novelization of Event Horizon and start reading it. I just love that you picked up the novelization for Event Horizon. Actually reading it. For whatever reason, shortly after I graduated high school, I somehow lost the ability to finish most books I started, though I used to absolutely devour them as a kid. I would sometimes go through 8 to 10 books a week. Now I fear there are only a few books I can focus on enough to sit down and actually read through. And the rest I go through via audiobook, usually when I'm on my way back to work or just biding time for something. Believe it or not, I find that frustrating. I actually much prefer to physically hold the book in my hands and to let my mind's own voice create the images using my imagination. Something about that gets lost when you let someone else's voice do it for you, I think. So you can imagine my surprise today when I found myself a little over halfway finished with the book. I have to say I'm also rather enjoying it. In fact, I'm enjoying the book more than I enjoyed the film. I don't think it's a bad movie by any means, but I think the stories behind the butchering of the film and the editing process definitely ring true. The characters have more time to breathe, motivations are more clearly established, and we get to learn more about the setting. In fact, I found myself highly amused by how similar the universe in which the film is set is to The Expanse. It reads very much like an alternate timeline version of The Expanse universe, even referring to belters and crash couches, though they are called gravity couches here. I find myself wishing they'd been able to recover the cut footage to put together a director's cut. Perhaps if we are lucky, the television series they are purportedly working on will give the original script its due, but with Adam Wingard attached, I fear all of the background and character detail will be trimmed down to nearly nothing, much as he did with Godzilla vs. Kong. I feel that I think I'm in the minority position of my disappointment with. Oh, no, you're not. I'm right there with you, sir. Either way, the atmosphere in the book is wonderful and creepy, and the images it evokes in my head are far darker and more sinister in my imagination than I found them to be in the film itself. I suppose it poses an interesting question. While it is generally understood that the book is almost always better than the movie, how much does the same rule apply for books based on the screenplays for movies? Well, some are good and some are bad. I have to try and go through and reread my novelizations to test that hypothesis. Read all those Alan Dean Foster novelizations. They're pretty good. Either way, it feels good to be reading again, especially when I'm reading science fiction. I'd almost forgotten how much joy there is to be found in imagining those universes in my head, if only for a little while, to join those characters on adventures. I mean, yes, I do get the same from audiobooks to an extent, but it just feels so much more rich when you let your own mind and voice do the work. I completely agree. Anyway, if you haven't read the Event Horizon novelization, I recommend you try it out. It actually makes me want to seek out more horror and sci-fi. Dude, novelizations, I can't even begin to tell you how much stuff there is for you to read. I mean, yes, I do get the same feelings from audiobooks to an extent, but it actually makes me want to seek out more sci-fi horror. Anyways, I'm keeping this one short, especially after the poorly worded essay I hit you with the other day. Thank you as always for being willing to take the time to read my writings and offer your thoughts, and please keep safe, good sir. Matthew in Japan. Well, Matthew, I'm right there with you. I used to read a lot of novelizations specifically because they would always have scenes like Vonda McIntyre's novelizations of like Star Trek 2 and 3. I would read those because there was extra scenes that weren't in the movie. I was like, oh, I got to read that. That's some cool shit. But yeah, I don't really read novelizations anymore, although there's people making a documentary about movie novelizations, and my good friend Dave Hargrove has been collecting movie novelizations, which is kind of cool. So there you go. But I would recommend, there's so many great science fiction and horror novels out there. I mean, even someone like Dan Simmons, one author, has written some of my favorite science fiction and horror novels. Dan Simmons, of course, wrote the Hyperion Cantos, which I cannot recommend highly enough. Or, if you really want to have your mind blown, read his duology, Olympos and Ilium. Pardon me, it's Ilium and Olympos. Read those two books, man. You want to have your mind blown? Those are read Hyperion and Fall of Hyperion, then read Ilium and Olympus. And Olympus, I say post, it's just probably Olympus. Read those 4 books. Then try his horror novel, Carrion, Carr, Carrion, Comfort. That's a long book, man. It can be a slog, but I think you'll dig it. And that's by one author. Check those out. Let's see. This next letter comes from Josh Valentine. Josh Valentine. As you know... Oh, by the way, let me tell you about Josh Valentine. So, Josh Valentine came to the Landmark Theater on Saturday, September 4th, here in town, to watch Tango Shalom. He came up and introduced himself. He came because I said, hey, I'll be at the theater. And we brought him out to dinner with us. You know, we had dinner, brought him out. He was a fan of this show and the John Campea show, and he had just moved out from Boston to work in the entertainment business. He'd been here for 2 weeks and came out. We invited him out to dinner with us. So that's who Josh Valentine is. He is a Post-Geek Singularity and Imagination member and an Imagination connoisseur. So Josh Valentine says, as you know, I had the absolute pleasure of seeing Tango Shalom on Saturday, September 4th, and I wanted to share my thoughts regarding the film with you. I myself am not Jewish, and I was not raised with any traditional religion. However, I've been drawn to films like Tango Shalom that portray themes of faith in ways that make them seem bigger than the exclusionary nature I've personally perceived from the majority of organized religions. I love the story of Moshe Yehuda, his crisis of faith, as well as the portrayal of his family. As I've said, I've often found myself fascinated by films with themes of faith, but certainly not fascinated by the faith-based films that seem to be more concerned with preaching a flavor of the week talking point. I'm not down on someone making a film about their faith, but there seems to be a disconnect between these films and a film like Tango Shalom. Tango Shalom, while seemingly a fun, light romp, also has a terrific sociological depiction of the life of a Hasidic rabbi, his family, his friends, and how his faith guides him as a person. To me, this is a film about relationships. Moshe's relationship with his wife, to his children, his colleagues, his community, and most importantly, his faith. In this regard, Tango Shalom succeeds in the same way that films like Fred Zinnemann's A Man for All Seasons, Danny Boyle's Millions, and Carl Dreyer's The Passion of Joan of Arc. Bruh! I swear to God, I did not have Josh, Mr. Valentine, compare Tango Shalom to these 3 films. But Josh, I will take that, buddy. I will take that. The Passion of Joan of Arc succeed in portraying a crisis of faith. Those films are far more serious in tone, but still depict the faith of their characters in a very personal way, not in a preachy way. That's what I really love about Tango Shalom. It's not afraid of being a light comedy while having realistic characters with faith-based dilemmas that can be relatable to anyone watching despite their religious background. I'd like to congratulate you, Rob, on the theatrical release, as well as Mr. Bologna, the enormous cast and crew of the longest credited film I think I've ever seen. It's true. Thank you for... But there's 2 songs, 2 pieces. There's great original score and there's a great song. Thank you for your kindness and congeniality on Saturday after the screening. As you know, I just moved across the country from Massachusetts to pursue a career in entertainment, and meeting you was really inspirational and good personal motivation for my new adventure in Los Angeles. Best wishes on the theatrical run and expansion. So, well, Josh, I want to thank you for coming down. You know, to me, what Los Angeles was always best at was having random chance meetings with people, and you never know where they will lead. And a lot of the people that later became my best friends, I would meet somewhere, then I'd see them again, and then see them again, and then finally we'd exchange numbers, and now I've been friends with them for years. So you just never know. And first of all, I want to thank you for coming out and coming up to me and saying hello. And hey, you got to go to dinner, so how cool is that? It was great to have you there. So that was awesome. And thank you so much. This letter comes from Dave. Hello, Rob and the rest of the Burnettwork. I love what you do. I also never miss an episode of the John Campea Show, and I love what Rob adds to John's show when he's on there. Why, thank you. This isn't so much a letter as it is a question. I just finally upgraded from my DVD copy to the newest Blu-ray release of my favorite Charlie Sheen movie, released in 1996 when I was 2, The Wraith. The Wraith! I don't understand what took so fucking long for this to be remastered. I fucking love this movie. Anyhow, I was just curious if you've watched The Wraith, and if so, what did you think of it? I saw The Wraith opening weekend in the theater. I liked it. It was fun. it was a very enjoyable genre flick, but it didn't change my life, but I did like it. I thought it was fun. I haven't seen it in ages. I was actually thinking of picking up that Blu-ray, but I did not. But you know what? In your honor, I probably should. I mean, for somebody who loves The Wraith as much as you do, I should pick it up. And remember, if nothing else, The Wraith will always live in my heart because of Sherilyn Fenn. Before there was Twin Peaks, there was Two Moon Junction. My God. Enough said about that. You gotta love it. Well, I'll tell you. This one comes from Omar94. Hi, Rob, moderators, and Post-Geek Singularity. This will be a quick letter. I just want to say congratulations on Tango Shalom coming out. I know it's been a long journey for the movie, but it's great to see it finally be done and in theaters. With this movie, let's see if it will lead you to getting to make more movies. I remember you saying there was a project you really wanted to make for over 20 years or something. There was also a script I remember you saying you wanted to make, which you read the first page of on the show. It started with something like Philip Marlowe on the worst day or something like that. That's very true. We'll see how things turn out. Thanks, and live long and prosper. Well, that's very nice of you, Omar. Thank you for that. Yeah, I'll tell you, when you get a movie theatrically released and you get an article in Deadline, there are doors that open for you that were closed previously. And let's just say many doors have been opened in certain respects. Now it's all about walking through them or to see which door you want to walk through or whose door you want to walk through. So we'll see how that's going to work. But thank you for that, and I will keep you abreast. The Burnettwork, things are, as they said when Max Rockatansky found his way to Bartertown, dice are rolling. We shall see how they come up. Yeah, so who knows what may happen. Simon Abram writes in. Simon Abram says, Hi, Rob. At last, I find the courage to write my first letter to you. I hope the first of many. It was great to meet you in Portland and to have a chance to chat about everything and nothing while enjoying some drinks. I was nervous at first, after watching your shows, wondering if you'll enjoy our conversation. I don't know about you, but I thought it was a lot of fun, introducing you to my lovely wife Gretchen, sharing stories of our pasts, even getting to talk about Goldorak. Simply a lot of fun. I think I spent most of the drive home telling Gretchen how happy I was and how cool you are. Well, thank you so much. It was also a great time seeing you on the set the next day while you were setting up for the crisis medicine shoot. I was very proud to show you pictures of my own Robservatory, which I simply call the Lego room, while Gretchen calls it the office. Now, first of all, let me give you a little background. So Simon is a Frenchman, and Simon is a fencing teacher. There's a fencing school, and he's an Olympic. He competed in the Olympics. He's an Olympic fencer, but he is an imagination connoisseur, and he does have a beautiful room with great Lego Star Wars collector sets. And his lovely wife, Gretchen, is a beautiful lady who seemed like she was very, very intelligent, and I loved her style. She kind of had a blazer on and a cool hat and great long hair. Beautiful girl. And so it seems like Simon's very squared away. He's the kind of imagination connoisseur you imagine yourself to be, or that you want to grow up to be. So it was great to meet you too, Simon. I started collecting Lego Star Wars sets in 2009, shortly after moving to the States and realizing a Lego store was within 5 minutes of my apartment. My first set was a Republic gunship with clone troopers and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Oh, the memories. Most of the time, the Lego room is my happy place, whether I play video games, paint minis, watch movies, or simply look at it all. I feel happy and relaxed. Most of the time, though, because once in a while, especially when I have to dust it all, I start wondering, and the love becomes hate. It takes hours to get stuff off the shelves, dust the toys themselves, and put it all back in good order, and I ask myself, are you getting too old for that? How much money would you have saved if not for these things? How much money could you get if you sold it all now? I convince myself that I hate it all, and I feel like that for a day or two. Yet a couple of days later, I sit in my chair, I look at it, and I feel joy and love for it all over again. What about you, Rob? Do you have moments like that? Do you even spend hours dusting all those shelves and hot toys? I actually do. Anyway, I'll end here and start thinking about my next letter to you. I think I'll share my thoughts on The Witcher. Take care, Rob, and thank you for being who you are, Simon. Simon, Well, I very much appreciate that. It was great meeting you. And Mike, Dr. Schertz's daughter, Kira, has been a student of Simon's for some time, and she's getting quite good at fencing. She's been offered a scholarship. So thank you for writing it. But yeah, sometimes you get so much of this crap. I like when my crap is all organized. I shouldn't call it crap. When all this stuff, like right now, I'm halfway through adding lights. I was in the middle of doing all this stuff. Then Tango Shalom, it got picked up for theatrical distribution, and the best laid plans of mice and men went to hell in a handbasket. So I had to go do other things. Man, I am really getting schwitzy. It must be 100 degrees in here. But what are you going to do? It's good. It's good to have a little schwitz. Anyway, thank you, Simon, for writing in, and it was great to meet you and your lovely wife, Gretchen. Let's see. Pedro Ferreira wrote in. Hello, Pedro. I should say Pedro, right? It's Pedro, not Pedro. It's Pedro, right? Pedro. Hi, Rob. I just want to ask what's going on with the Ghostbusters movie. I saw the trailer and almost got the T-shirt, but I'm watching Okay, let me start again. Hi, Rob. I just want to ask what's going on with Ghostbusters. I saw the trailer and almost got the T-shirt, but I'm watching Ghostbusters or Stranger Things. Maybe I brought this up in the past, but the first Ghostbusters movie is my favorite movie of all time. I was eager to go to a movie about the original team handing over to new recruits, not a bunch of children. I know fans were never fond of the kid Ghostbusters in the cartoon series, so I'm incredibly wary of this. I'm supposed to be misogynistic because I didn't like the 2016 movie, so there is a term for not wanting Ghostbusters who are children. I don't know. I'm sure someone will invent a term in time for the movie's release. The other problem is not setting it in New York, but in the countryside, takes away the epic large scale of it. I do worry, and my expectations are very low going by the trailer. This begs the question, why do movies today look so gray and blurry? The Star Wars sequel movies visually looked horrible with desaturated colors. Anyway, I seem to be in a minority because people love the new Ghostbusters trailer, apart from Grace Randolph. I actually agree with her for once on a movie. Dogs and cats living together. She feels if you call it Ghostbusters and give us what we want. I think she hit the bullseye, but I must be careful, as while I feel Grace is a great showbiz correspondent, she's not great at critiquing movies. It's like that person some months ago said, Rob, beware Grace Randolph's hair. Forget Ghostbusters for a second. What's going on with season 2 of Picard? That trailer was weird. Picard ends up in an alternate timeline where he's still in Starfleet and all of his psychotic buddies lead respectable lives. It's almost like he ends up in the proper Star Trek universe. But quick, Picard needs to change the timeline because it's not dark or nihilistic Kurtzman Trek, and this is terrible. It's almost like Mr. Kurtzman dangling a carrot in front of the eyes. Fans' eyes. Well, anyway, that's what it all came across from the trailer. Isn't this treatment of Star Trek getting on your nerves a little, Rob? Yes, Pedro. It is. I mean, by this point, I seem quite bemused by it all. I've seen you get angry over this, and it sparked an idea I had to feature you in a TV show. I'm not sure what to call it yet, but I came up with the opening credits narration. We get someone like, I don't know, Ted Cassidy. He's not here anymore. To narrate it, imagine some lonely piano music playing over the credits. Something like this. Robert Meyer Burnett, writer, director, searching for a way to find out what it takes to be an imagination connoisseur. Then an accidental... Actually, I shouldn't read it like that. Robert Meyer Burnett, director, writer, searching for a way to find out what it takes to be an imagination connoisseur. Then an accidental overdose of gamma radiation alters his body chemistry. And now, when Rob grows angry or outraged over modern Star Trek or the cancellation of Lust, Caution action figures, a startling metamorphosis occurs. He becomes Alex Kurtzman. Kurtzman is driven by rage to destroy franchises and is pursued by Alec Peters. Rob, Mr. Peters, don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry. The executive is wanted for a murder of a franchise CBS probably asked him to commit. Robert Meyer Burnett's career, according to TrekCore users, apparently is believed to be dead. and he must let the world think that his career is dead until he can find a way to control the raging spirit that gives us such great rants on his podcast that hopefully his detractors will start listening to. Dun, dun, dun! In no way, of course, is any of this lifted from a popular comic book or TV series. You won't find it in the MCU because it's too good for the MCU. Wink, wink. No, I'm sure Mr. Kurtzman is a nice fellow, but you would think he would make sure to please both sides of the fan base. Plus, the studio's more at fault here. I mean, what the studio decides to release a 4K cut of the motion picture director's edition apart from the upcoming box set? That's like leaving the appendices out of the upcoming Lord of the Rings box set. What a stupid decision. Kind regards, Pedro. Well, Pedro, yeah, it's really weird. I mean, in terms of my Hollywood career being moribund or over, I would mention one more time, if I may, that coming to Canada, yes, that's right.
Hashem told you to dance in a tango
A
contest?
dancing teacher wants to tango with you.
Critics are raving about Tango Shalom. It's clever and inventive, with right chemistry on and off the dance floor. God damn right. Come on now. For those of you who don't know, Tango Shalom is opening in Canada. It is soon to open all across Russia, and it is opening in New Jersey, throughout New York, more so than it already did, and all through Los Angeles. It's down at LA Live. It's playing at the Burbank 16. And yeah, Sonny Dominguez, man, we're going to have a meetup Friday, Burbank 16. We're going to go there and shalom it out. So yeah, I mean, I do have an independent movie that I produced, edited, post-supervised, and was the visual effects supervisor for. So I don't know what they're talking about. There also is an animated series on Netflix I'm working on. And oh, wait, there's even more things I haven't told anyone, but that's okay. Alec Peters hasn't been able to make two 15-minute movies in 6 years, so what are you going to say? What are you going to do? Anyway, why don't we jump ahead? Now, I missed some Super Chats last Saturday on Midnight Metal. Don't think I haven't forgotten, but I'm going to read those on Midnight Metal on Friday. So I'm going to go back and not read those Super Chats. I'm going to read the Super Chats from today. Justin Toner. Hello, Justin Toner. Justin Toner says, I watched my new Blu-ray of Shakedown, directed by James Glickenhaus, his last movie. Loved it. Peter Weller and Sam Elliott were great. Loved the action, and also loved your appearance on Scott Mantz and Steve Morris's The Podcast Enterprise Incidents. Enterprise Incidents was a great discussion of A Taste of Armageddon. Well, Justin, I loved that discussion. I thought it was great. Really enjoyed it. What they are doing, what Steve and Scott are doing, I think, is an incredible Star Trek podcast. I love it. It was an honor to be on it. Everyone should check that out. T Down Under sent in a super chat and says, how about 2 separate Trek days, one for the good stuff and another for the drivel since 2009? I would say, why do we have to give the drivel from 2009 a day at all? No, it's okay. Some people like it. People are like, Rob, you're a gatekeeper. Really? Have I kept you from enjoying anything you like? Have I? You know, until I stop and stop you at a literal gate and say, you can't watch this, the idea of gatekeeping is so stupid. I hate it. No one is keeping anybody from anything, and I don't begrudge anybody who likes modern Star Trek. It's a different era, you know? I mean, I grew up, I'm older than you probably, so I don't begrudge that. You can like whatever you want, but know why you like it. Don't just object to people who dislike it. If you like something, I don't care what it is, know how and why, know how to defend it, first of all, and know why you like it, and be able to articulate it. If somebody doesn't like something that you love, the best thing to do is know how to defend what it is that you love. Don't tear down somebody else. Let anybody else have their own opinion. But the real lesson learned is if you learn how to defend what it is you love, maybe you can sway the people who hate it. I mean, you couldn't sway me, of course. It doesn't matter what you say. But I will at least respect the fact that you know why you like something like Star Trek Discovery or the abomination that is Picard. And I would love to listen to your articulate ideas defending either show because I might learn something. I'm not saying I wouldn't. Jeff Yerke is here. The Yerk Man with, of course, say it with me now, Mrs. Y. Hi, Rob. Like you, Star Trek was my religion. Saw my first Trek in 1966. I cherished it and Matt Jeffrey's ship designs. It contributed to me becoming a graphic artist. It's been a part of me for 55 years, and now Star Trek is dead. Shithead AK killed it. Live long and prosper, the Yerk Man. Well, Jeff, back to you and your wife. First of all, how you doing? I hope everything's good with the two of you. and that you were staying away from those big wildfires out there. Yeah, I don't understand modern Star Trek at all. I don't understand the people that look at it and go, yeah, this is what we're presenting to the public. I wouldn't. Like, I'm like, hey, I wouldn't do that. It's maddening. Aiken sends in a super chat and says, back in the 60s, my dad and uncle, my mom's brother, bonded over the weekly run of the original series. I have them all, and they have this association for me. And that is a good thing. I love that. Glenn Taylor said, Rob, my wife showed the Tango Shalom trailer to her friend's mom, who was a dancer from Cuba in the 60s, and she loved it. It made her day. Hopefully, we can take her to see it when it comes to our area. Well, Glenn, I hope you can. It's all over New York City and New Jersey, well, part of New Jersey, and, of course, Canada and Southern California, and it will be playing all throughout Russia theatrically, which is very, very cool. I just don't know why I love that so much. Kevin, the comic doctor, how are you, sir? Hey, Rob, are there enough imagination connoisseurs in Ontario to pitch in and fly you up to T-Dot to catch Tango Shalom on Friday? It would be nice. Hope you're doing well, Kev. I should do that. I should come up to Toronto, and a little short on cash right now, but I should do that. Bring you some more comics, and that'd be fun. I'd love to. I've never been to Toronto. I've been to Montreal. I've been to Winnipeg. Been to Calgary. Been to Vancouver. Been to Edmonton. But I've never been to Toronto. Can you believe that? I don't know why. Rhett Proctor says, I must say the Marvel Zombies episode of What If was the best by far, and I'd like to see a full series based on that. It was that awesome. You know what, Rhett? I got to tell you. I did watch that today. I went for the 1-2 punch of episode 4 and episode 5. I watched the Doctor Strange episode, which I really liked. I used to love in the What If comics when the world would end, and so many of them ended that way. I love those nihilistic endings in What If comics, and they've certainly recreated them. I'll tell you what I didn't like. I didn't like that zombie Iron Man and zombie Hawkeye, and they still use their weapons and armor. I mean, come on. I just didn't like that. I didn't like it. But I liked the episode. It was fun. Nick Paris says, what's up, Rob? So now that I've seen Tango Shalom headline a Deadline article, I guess you're big time now and about to kick Robservations to the curb. I am not. I'm curious what you think about AMC spending real money advertising its theaters finally. What Nick Parrish is referring to is AMC is starting its own television ad campaign to get people to come back to the theaters. They've invested a hell of a lot of money in their theaters, making sure the presentation was great. And now they are going to do a series of TV commercials. I think it's a great idea. I think that it's a necessary idea. They're going to get people to come back to the movies. I think that's a great thing to do. I absolutely believe that. For sure. Jack Wallace says, oh, let's get a closer at that new Ryobi figure above your right shoulder. Are you talking about the Joy figure? Is that what this figure? I haven't taken, I assume that's what you mean. This is Ana de Armas from Blade Runner 2049. I have not taken off the cellophane of her boots, but here is her outfit and her gun, and I have not got Detective K yet. But this is actually a pretty good figure. I think this is a third-party figure. I think the likeness is there. I really like this figure a lot, actually. I think it's really cool. But yes, this is from Blade Runner 2049. I do not have Detective K yet, but I will be getting. Detective K and Rick Deckard are on order. I just don't have them yet, but they're coming. I think that's what you want to see, right? Or were you talking about one of the Seven Samurai figures? But you said new, so I figure it was that figure, Jack. And again, congratulations to Aiden. John Wayne. Is this me, John Wayne? John Wayne says Star Trek was real to me as well. And not only helped me through adolescence as a geeky kid not yet comfortable in my own skin, but it also led to a friendship that began with a love of Trek that has lasted 30 plus years. John, I love hearing that. And I know, it's hard for me to explain the reality of the Star Trek franchise. And I think a lot of us, kids especially, who grew up, and that's why when they say, well, we've got to make a show directed at children, so we're going to make Star Trek Prodigy. Look, I hate to say it, but Prodigy is, of all the new Star Trek shows, it's the one I know two of the lovely ladies who wrote on the show. They're very talented and smart, and also David Mack consulted, one of my favorite Star Trek writers. So yeah. Wait, where was I? So yes, John, I'm sorry, I just lost my place. So yes, I feel the same way that you do. Star Trek was real. It was totally real to me. And modern Star Trek is not. And I don't think, they're like, well, we have to make Star Trek that appeals to kids. No, you're going to make a television show, a science fiction show for kids that you're going to use Star Trek iconography and slap the Star Trek name on it. We'll see if it's Star Trek, but it's got good writers, so I think it could be good. Jack Wallace, with son Aiden, who I met when I was up in Portland, says, hey, everyone, Aiden wants to give away his winning photo to say thanks for all the love and support this community has shown him, so be looking for that on the pages on Facebook soon. So for those of you who don't know, young Master Aiden, 10-year-old Aiden, he of doing the action figure photography, he submitted one of his photos at a contest, and it was here. I must find the photos. Okay, so I believe this is this it? I'm gonna see if I can put it into the chat. Uh-oh, what have I done? Have I done something that's screwed me up? I can't tell. Hang on. Yeah, I better not do it. But so young Master Aiden won best of show for 17 and under, and he's 10. He did a great show of The Witcher, a great paint. You know what? Let me just get this. I'm gonna see if I can find it. Sometimes when I'm doing things live, they don't always work out the way you want them to. So, well, here it is. Here, let's see if this will open up. Yes. Okay. So here we go. Here's young Master Aiden's picture with the ribbon. So that is The Witcher, and the title is "Come Out, You Little Rascal," with The Witcher above. Clearly, some kind of a creature is bored into the ground. But 10-year-old Aiden took that photo, and it won the grand prize for kids 17 and under. I would say that is an amazing thing. So congratulations, young Master Aiden. This is amazing. An imagination connoisseur in training. Amazing. So that's what Aiden wants to give away for all the support. I would say this. I would keep that winning photo, Aiden, and I would frame it, put it on your wall, and look at it and use it as inspiration. But what you should do is give away a print of that picture. Have it printed out and sign it. But you can't give away the one that actually won the award. That's something you need to keep, and you need to put it on the wall. And you need to look at it and remember the sense of accomplishment that you felt. You took a great photo. You set that photo up, and I think it should be a constant reminder of things, that's something you should put on your wall as a point of pride. But definitely make another print, or maybe like I was that Shutterfly business, Shutterfly that's always on Ellen. I got a free Shutterfly coupon, and just for fun, here's a picture of me. I show this on Fully Articulated. This is me with our psycho killer from The Hills Run Red. But I really like this. This is printed on canvas. It's really cool. It turned out, it looks a little blown out in this, but it's not. The colors are really good, very naturalistic. I love this. I want to get a bunch of pictures of the fam and stuff of my history printed on this canvas. I think it's really, really cool. But yeah, I'm not condoning Shutterfly, but I know they always give people money on the Ellen DeGeneres show, but I think it's really cool. Print it out like that. And send it to somebody. I think that'd be really cool. Jack Wallace said, also, Matthew in Japan, Aiden is also on the autism spectrum, so thank you for your openness. Well, Jack, I'm sure that Matthew in Japan liked hearing that. But I'll tell you one thing. Being on the autism spectrum has not changed or got in the way of Aiden winning a ribbon, beating out kids that are almost twice his age. Heck yeah. Glenn Taylor says, Rob, did you hear that they're making a sequel to What About Bob? It will star Bob Iger and Bob Chapek, and Scarlett Johansson will also star. Glenn, I would watch the shit out of that movie. The Jughead once sent in a super chat and says, Hi, Rob, I totally agree with you regarding your perspective on current Star Trek. They have deviated from Gene Roddenberry's utopian vision. I console myself by rewatching Star Trek the original series, the animated series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and continued Enterprise. And I noticed you didn't put Voyager in there. I bet you wanted to. I appreciate the great work Roddenberry, Fontana, and Bergman gave us. Love and respect from the UK, bro. Well, Jughead, LL. Well, live long and prosper. Richard is here. Richard says, remember when that article about communism was on the Star Trek main site? Wasn't the Federation big on individual rights? Yes. So much so that it that it found it hard to fight the Maquis because they were citizens. I'm at a loss while old Trek fans defend this. Yeah, I don't know. Star Trek being communistic? No. I mean, it was all about individual rights. So, yes. Fernando Barrero says, Hi, RMB. Did you get the shirts I sent you? Yes, I did. And, you know what? I have a letter to read from you, and I have the shirts. Actually, you know what's funny? I forgot because I was going to wear one of them today, and I didn't, but I will. Thank you, by the way. And I was going to read your letter and show the shirts. Did you get the shirts I sent you? Yes. In any case, my mom and I loved Tango Shalom. Congrats. Great, clever, cute movie that left you smiling at the end. This has to put you back on the Hollywood map more than you were before. Are you coming to New York soon? I don't know if I'll be in New York soon, but I'm glad you went and saw it. Go see it again this weekend. Take your friends. Tell everybody you know. Because I need people to go. Look at all these people that became members. So yeah, I'm glad you went and saw it. I'm glad your mom went and saw it. And it's just such a thrill. I don't know if I'm back on the Hollywood map, but it's always nice to have a movie in theaters. It makes it easier to get your phone calls returned. That's certainly something. But there's stuff happening. There's always something happening good for you if you've got something out. Product on the shelves. It changes the perception of you, at least for a week. Tom Jr. Jackson says, To Live and Die in L.A. is coming to 4K from Kino Lorber. Are you kidding? Are you kidding? It's really? No way. I knew that, though, you know. I found your AHA drink on Amazon. Yeah, people have told me that. I got to order it, man. I got to order that stuff on Amazon. Let's see. Glenn Mark sends in a super chat and says, a Star Trek The Original Series episode explains the Kelvin timeline. It's infiltrated by shape-shifting 100-tentacled creatures. Recall, second season, the 22nd episode, this is the Kelvin timeline. Ha, ha, ha. That's actually kind of funny. That refers to, by any other name, with Rojan. Rojan and Barbara Boucher is in that episode. Woo! Yeah. Probably one of the most beautiful women to ever appear on Star Trek is in that episode. I really like that episode, by the way. But yes, they were named the Kelvins from the Andromeda Galaxy. You are correct. I like that. I like what you did there. Well, listen, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is so hot in here. I think I've lost 10 pounds just broadcasting today. Star Trek Day starts in 20 minutes. I think I'm going to jump off now and maybe hit the head, get ready to see what anger they can stir up in me. Coming to you live from the Skirball Center here in L.A., Star Trek Day starts at 5:30, and I'm going to watch it live. Maybe I'll come on and do a midnighter and talk about what I thought today. And tomorrow, for those of you who don't know, I'm on the Designing Hollywood podcast team, and we are doing a big live broadcast tomorrow to celebrate the year anniversary of the Designing Hollywood podcast, which is, you can get the Designing Hollywood podcast wherever podcasts are available, and I'm going to be interviewing some really, really interesting people, that very interesting industry insiders for it, and it's going to be pretty cool, and people who design for Marvel, and it's going to be great. And I think you guys are going to really dig it. Also, I want to remind everybody that PGS All-Stars shows are on, and Steve Foley and Scotty Richardson's Set to Stun Star Trek episodes are out as well, and look for more of those. So there you go. And I guess let me see if I can find one. Here you go. Here's a Designing Hollywood podcast promo, and I'll play it so you can hear me talk some more. Greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, Robert Meyer Burnett, and I invite you to watch and listen to the Designing Hollywood podcast, brought to you by Martika Ibarra and the great, legendary Hollywood costume designer, Marilyn Vance. I am afforded the wonderful opportunity of co-hosting the show. If you are interested in the magic of Hollywood, the design of Hollywood, the clothes of Hollywood, watch the Designing Hollywood podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts from, or find the video version on YouTube. That's right, the Designing Hollywood podcast. Why would you ever want to miss it? Especially if you love the movies. And there you go. So check it out. Yeah, last time I interviewed Colleen Atwood, 4-time Academy Award winner. But yeah, I'm going to be interviewing the woman who designed the costumes for Spider-Man No Way Home. Guess what kind of questions I'm going to ask her? Ooh, I wonder. Anyway, I'm going to end this episode, Robservations episode number 739. First of all, I want to thank my moderating staff. There's a lot of you here. Justin Toner, Joshua Levesque, Darren Seeley, Louise X Sparrow is here. I saw her. By the way, if find Louise X Sparrow on Twitter and see her drawings. Louise has been holding out on us. She's a very talented lady. So check that out. Thank you for all you do. I want to thank everybody for supporting the channel via Super Chats and tips. That's very nice of you. Thank you so much. Keeps us going and all of that. Thank you for those who have become members of the channel. Appreciate that as well. Now, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but hey, let's all go in with a sense of optimism to this live shindig that is Star Trek Day. Let's see what they have to say. Maybe we'll see some Strange New Worlds footage. Maybe hope beyond all hope. It'll be good. It still won't be canonical, but it could be good. Hope springs eternal, doesn't it? It certainly does for me. But anyway, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I would say to all of you, have a better day. And on that note, on to Star Trek Day. Ugh.